Hello, gente. Because this is probably the beginning of a podcast. Hello,
Yeah, really.
gente. We might as well just say hello.
Indeed. Hello, Tava Baird. Yeah, I was
Um,
like, I better hit record because it sounds like there's some interesting stuff happening already.
yeah, just interesting information. I'm having a lot of situations happen lately where I was looking and looking and looking for information for a year or more and couldn't find it. And then suddenly it's showing up in like the last 48 hours. I pulled out my notebook because I always like to have my notebook ready when we do this. And I go to draw Samael's sigil. And I have a trouble remembering the very end of it sometimes, like if the little circle's supposed to have a line through it or not. So while you were getting your microphone set, I popped up on Google so I could copy the end of the sigil because for some reason or other, he doesn't have a simple one like Azrael does. It's like four figures all tied together. And it showed me a different one than I'd seen before. And I was like, the beginning is mostly the same, but it's more of a structured four shape than a loop. And then the end is totally different. And I'm like, wait, is this like what's going on? So I start looking it up, and it turns out there are people online using one sigil to represent him in the Prince of Demons aspect, and a slightly different ones being used in the places where they're talking about him as an archangel. The
Oh,
beginning of the
interesting.
symbol is the same, but in one it's a loop, in another it almost looks like a four. The center is the same, and then in one it's just a circle at the end, and in the other it's like a letter Y with a piece through it. And I was like, wait a second, how many times have I looked at this and never noticed the difference that there's two different sigils for him? These are two different main bodies that like completely different. I haven't seen them with any other angel. And on that page, when I went to follow the Archangel thing, it's a whole bunch of information about him that I have never read. Now, to be fair, I just don't sit there and Google Samael mostly because he's talking to me all the time. But still, I've looked things up, like when he'll refer to something I don't get. There's nothing like Googling an angel who is laughing at you while you do it. This is what this page says. Samael is the archangel of theology. So, theologians, people who study religion, and offers the power of protection. He is a protector of preachers among foreign nations and accompanied St. John through the desert on his way to preach, offering guidance and protection. Now, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, and I can't remember from Enfys's podcast episode. Is it Kabbalah, or am I saying it correctly?
I don't, I know there's
I know there's
Kabbalah and then there's like
Kabbalah or something
Kabbalah,
like that.
and I'm
Yes.
not sure, I don't remember which is
Which is which?
accurate. Yeah.
I know nothing about that, so I apologize to listeners who do. But it says he is described as being the severity of God. I'd heard that before. But then it said fifth archangel in the world of, and I don't know, I've never heard this term before. Beri apostrophe AH. Beria? Beria? Among his portions are Aseu, the people who inherit the sword, goats, demons, and destroyer angels. But I had never heard of him being a guardian of preachers and theologians before.
Which makes so very much sense. I mean, what did he tell you? You were going to be clergy for the dead?
Yes. Yep.
And what do you do for him but go around and spread his word and spread his message? He guards that, and he said this work is protected. And wow, that I love that part.
I'd read about him appearing in the book of Enoch, and I'd read about associations with watchers, and I'd read all about the different things he's confused for. But I'm really interested to know that's how he appears in a different sacred text. This association with St. John, I had never heard of before.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's real. It's really fascinating too. The preachers among foreign nations. When you think about it, the things that you are being told to preach, the things that he's telling you to share, this isn't exactly overall a culture where this kind of information, it would be a normal part of the way of thinking. You're
Yeah.
not in an indigenous culture where it would be like, of course, things are the way that they are. You're preaching this information, sharing this information in a foreign land, a place that where this information is really foreign to many of those that live here and that hear it. I was talking to a student the other day in a Reiki class about how so much of this information that we're sharing, it sounds way out there and it sounds so far-fetched, or the idea that animals and all of nature as being alive in a not in just a beating heart or something's moving through its sense, but truly conscious. And that while in our Western cultures that seems like this massive leap and this huge thing, but I was like, honestly, science and all these things are really progressing to the point that quantum physics and a lot of the stuff that we talk about with energy and all these things are actually being scientifically proven. What they're doing is validating the ancient wisdom teachings of all of these indigenous cultures and these ancient wisdom traditions for thousands of years.
Yep.
And it's only odd to us to hear these things because of where we were born. If we were born in a tribe in Peru or in Brazil or these indigenous cultures, all of the things that we're talking about would be so commonplace and normal that everybody would talk about them and they would be cultivated. When children showed a propensity in certain areas of being able to hear and see more clearly or move energy, that would be cultivated from a really young age. And
Right.
here it's stuff that people put in the category of mental illness or something really foreign or odd. And that probably doesn't seem all that connected to what you were saying, but I think the idea that a foreign land is really the place where this information seems foreign,
Yeah.
but in other places it's just as clear and obvious as the sun rises in the east and sets in the west kind of thing.
I completely agree with you. We were born here, but we are still strangers in a strange land. Our culture has lost the ability to observe in a lot of ways. We're very driven to get our message out and to express ourselves. And I mean, this is coming from like the most talkative person probably anybody's ever heard. So,
On a
you know,
podcast
I
where we express ourselves.
I am not saying that I don't also struggle with this. I'm not trying to preach here. I'm saying, God, I recognize it in myself. But our society is very much market yourself, get your videos out there, get all your thoughts out there, that we frequently don't sit back and observe. And it's in that observing that we sense a lot of these things. I think I might have mentioned this before, but I always assumed, and I think a lot of people probably did as well, that when you look back at time when people had to make everything, they had to butcher their own meat and grow their own vegetables and hand sew their own clothes and spin their own wool and build their own houses, that they worked lots and lots more hours than we did. And in fact, they've done studies and figured out that that's not true, that we have less free time as humans now with all this technology to aid us. We have less free time. Our ancestors had less noise around them and honestly more time to sit and watch. And we've become a culture that we watch TV, but how many of us go out and sit in the backyard and listen to birds? I mean, I know you do, Jen, because you're the star angelic student. I'm sitting here talking about this, but I haven't been out in my backyard either, probably because it's 400 degrees out there. But taking that time, I'm about to go on vacation and I'm so excited to go sit on a mountaintop and have everything be closed on July 4th so that I can't go anywhere or I can't do anything. And I'm going to be forced to sit still and observe. With that in mind, when we finally post this episode on YouTube, I would like to apologize to anybody who watches it. I looked ragged out. Like there, people are going to turn on the video and go, "Whoa, what happened to Tava?" Um, am I still in the t-shirt that I used as a pajama shirt last night? Yes. Um, I was
It's a
running
great
late for the
t-shirt though.
it's a Medusa t-shirt. It's like a band t-shirt, except it's Medusa's name. Was I seriously contemplating podcasting in my undershorts because I couldn't find my pants? Briefly, yes. I couldn't stop thinking of like the podcast Smartless and that ours would then be called Pantsless. But I have pants on now. For anyone, I am wearing pants. Oh God, we probably should have you sing and get my head on straight at this point.
Yes, we will. I will sing and we'll open to
Thank you.
Michael and Samael and Gabriel and Azrael and see what they have in store for us today. I'm really interested to see where this goes and very clearly setting the boundaries and things so nothing gets hijacked again, like a couple episodes ago. And yeah, one thing that struck me too that I'd learned when I was actually helping my daughter in the study of ancient civilizations and the difference between going to an agricultural society and some of the hunter gatherer societies was that there was also more time for art and music. And they did so much more art and music. And so, in the time that they were not working, they were doing something that connected them in another way, that connected them to each other, that connected them to the divine and to nature. And they were bringing that through in creative ways, which I think is really beautiful. So, we will bring something through in a creative way and see how it leads our podcast here.
I'm so excited.
Ooh, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you there.
No, that was wonderful. And I have a lot to share. Feel like I should probably catch our listeners up on a little something. For the first six, I would say even year that I was speaking with Samael, because it's been what, we're coming up on 2 years this fall, I guess, since he first arrived. He has said precious little about himself. He talked a little bit about Lilith sporadically when I was writing down our first conversations. He mentioned her and had me paint a picture of her. But in the time since that book came out, about a year, almost a year and a half ago, he started speaking about her a lot more. As you know from listening to the podcast, Lilith, was around more, and he started talking about Michael, and I started getting these little glimpses into him, but he never really tells his story much. He'll say little snippets here and there. But lately, I would say in the last 2 weeks, for one of these occasions, he talked quite a bit about the Watchers. Yesterday morning, I woke up to hear him talking about heaven and what a heaven is, according to his definition, which was really enlightening for me. And in this, I'm sorry, guys, I'm trying not to cry because this was okay. I'll admit I'm doing a little crying.
Go for
I
it.
have a lot here, but he is talking about the concept of sitting and how, well, I'll just read it. Here we go. He's also getting more of a sense of humor where he makes, I guess, what could be called jokes more often now and starting to make more gestures and express more tenderness when he speaks of other angelic beings or other divine beings. There's a lot more of him talking about my brother this or my sister that. And it's interesting, he said that angelic beings don't have gender, but he tends to use a lot of biblical terms when he's expressing things and also applies gender to angels when speaking to them. I think he thinks it helps us follow what's going on. But anyway, here we go. This is what he said. How hard is it to go still, to be unoccupied, to not attempt to make every moment production or progress? Your businesses want increases, your leaders want coin, but to always push up, up, up is not natural. The universe expands infinitely, they say. Trust me when I tell you that there is a balance of collapse elsewhere. Look around you. Day and night ebb and flow, rise and fall. These are the rhythms you must attune yourself to if you wish to study the divine and bring more of your remembering state into this realm. Many of you wish to sit perfectly. Emulate a cross-legged monk, eyes blissfully closed, immovable. That may work for the monk's divine nature, but his process may be imperfect for you. If you cannot clear your mind, let it settle instead. The point is not to master your mind. The point is not to be ruled by it. Meditation can be many things: observation, contemplation, falling. They fell from heaven, your church elders say, a cautionary note in their tones. They fell to earth. They were cast out. But God casts out no one. So of what do they speak? The fall. Falling is nothing more than the balance of rising, a letting go of lifting, an unburdening. Some of us chose to fall to earth, to ground ourselves, to act to balance out another holy act in progress, to become not just pure divinity, but ones who could walk here. Some say we've sullied ourselves, but without letting go of some of who I once was, I would never have found Lilith, would not have found the words to speak to you, Ushala, would not appear here among you all to speak. I am among those who left the comforts of home to teach, to balance, to empower, to change, to be able to study the end. I am not one thing, and as a human, your soul too chose to fall.
Wow.
So this is interesting. I don't remember much about this from like the Bible when I was a kid, except that they said that there were angels that got kicked out of heaven and they fell. And there's horrible stories about having their wings torn off and that they went plummeting down into hell. And we get that dichotomy that's set up of you're a sinner or you're a saint, you're an angel or you're a demon. We get that split there, which causes fear. For how many centuries did people pay indulgences in order to be saved from the place where the fallen angels resided? And what it sounds like he's saying here is that that act of falling was a choice by some of the angels that gave them enough, not really physicality, but I guess altered their energies enough that they could speak to us and they could walk here and in other places and deliver messages between places. And that perhaps our definition of fallen is not what we thought it was. That instead, it sounds like it was a sacrifice or a choice made so that some of them could be teachers among us and maybe move in places that were somewhere between a realm where everybody is disembodied or maybe embodied in a completely different way or a pure energetic state and what we are here. And so he's saying he's listed among that he might be a quote unquote fallen angel, but that's not what we think it means. And that's a lot to contemplate because if you think of that, then that takes away our fear in a lot of ways. He's saying that divinity and unity and the place that you go to remember in between lives, what people would call God, doesn't kick anybody out, that it is love. So if it doesn't kick anybody out, what we heard of or saw, or the parts of this story that we thought we understood that helped to set up the very foundation of some of our religious teachings here on earth is incorrect. And that perhaps we don't have as much to be afraid of as we think we do.
Yeah,
What's your take?
I love the God casts no one out. And I've had conversations with a number of people lately who have grown up in very, very strict religions that are filled with a God who casts out all but a very select few. And they're starting to look at that and think, does that really make sense? How could there be a God who is love, but only chooses a few to be able to live for eternity or be saved from horrible torture or things like that? How could that be a God of love? And so I love every time I hear Samael say something like that. It just validates our beliefs that, yeah, a God that is love does not cast out, does not turn away, does not punish. And the idea of the falling being a choice of balance, a choice of being a part of the balance of the expansion as a part of our spiritual growth. We've talked about a number of times how there are these periods when we have this massive expansion. Our energy field expands, our channels expand, what we're capable of bringing through and connecting with, it expands, and then there's a necessary contraction. Like there has to be a contracting period to help to bring it in and integrate and balance that, because we can't be all expansion. And when I was hearing him talk about that, it can't just keep reaching upward and outwards without some sort of collapse. Think of this great tree, it cannot just grow up and out if it doesn't have an equal and opposite reflection of that canopy in the earth and in its deep, wide root system. A tree that does not have an equal amount of roots and depth into the earth as it has canopy reaching up to the sun cannot stand and would fall over. And there's nothing less than about being a root than there is about being a branch. And that was something that I was thinking about when he was talking about, you can't keep reaching up and out. I was thinking about having that tree analogy, and we use that a lot in energy healing as the reminder that you can only hold as much energy as you can ground. And that Samael chose to be a part of that grounding, that balancing, and in doing so is here to be able to help us and be able to bring things more into words. And I know we've talked a lot about how the difference in the way the different guides work and the way that we hear them and the way that we experience them. And he's always described himself as the Word, and how fairly rare it is to have a guide that communicates as clearly through words as he does. And that part of why he's able to do that is because he chose to leave behind part of himself and that full expansion in order to be closer to us and guide us and bring through the words. That we work at receiving messages in all these other ways, but sometimes we need the word to help to clarify.
And the thing I was also thinking about is we have this story of the angels being cast out, you know, devils, all this sort of thing. Think about when we're taught a story like that from a really young age, it's seeped into our culture. Just turn on the television. How many shows are there? Everything from cartoons when you're a little kid, where there's a little angel on one shoulder and a little devil on the other shoulder telling you to do good and bad things, right? It starts really young. TV shows that are all built around these characters. I keep thinking of Dogma from back in the early 90s, where I remember how scandalized. If you guys haven't seen Dogma, it's the most 90s movie ever made. But
The
I
Alanis
remember there
Morissette.
as God.
Right.
Alanis Morissette is God, okay? And I remember the scandal that they cast a young woman to play God. Like that movie, you watch it now, you're like, there is nothing scandalous about this film. But back in the 90s, that was a big deal that they dared put on film a woman playing God, right? And so it's all through our popular culture. Even if you didn't grow up with a Bible in your house, it's still all through our culture. Okay. And think about this idea that we have in our work lives, where we have bosses who are always trying to beat last quarter's figures. We are always trying to make the units that the person purchased at the cash register one more than it was last week. All of our performance reviews are not necessarily on how much we've grown or what innovative ideas we've shared or who we've mentored. They're on, let's make it bigger. How can we expand, expand, expand? But you have to have a balance for that. And our society has very much put a fear of not being angelic enough or good enough or pure enough or that we don't meditate the right way. When did meditation become a competition? I mean, that's not the point of meditation. But I've seen people go on retreats and be like, so and so sits so still, and I really wish I could do that. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's in everything that we do. And we always have this feeling that we're not good enough, and this underlying fear that if we're not good enough, we're going to be cast out, we're going to be demonized, we're going to be pushed aside, we're going to fall. And I think what Samael is trying to tell us is that falling can be a state of grace in itself. It is a letting go, it is an unburdening, it is a trust, it is a choice to not grasp so tightly and say, I'm getting too close to the sun. I need to stop rising for a while and let myself drop down again a little bit until I'm in a state of balance, until I'm closer to my natural state, an imperfect human being, and forgive ourselves for not achieving heaven every day. The things he was talking with me about yesterday, the concept of heaven is very different from for him than what I was taught as a kid. So it's funny, I'm going on vacation tomorrow, and I now I'm catching myself thinking about all the projects I was going to tuck in my basket to get a few extra things done while I was away. I was going to catch up on my reading. I was going to try to make some stuff. I actually have a business appointment scheduled on my vacation in another city. I think I need to go up on the mountaintop where we're going to be staying and let myself fall.
Yeah. And one of the things that you mentioned was trust. That was something that was coming through for me really strongly as a part of falling, is that part of falling is also an act of faith and trust that you will be caught, that you'll be received, that you will land somewhere that is solid and safe. I talk about trust falls all the time. And I've used the term Reiki as a trust fall so many times because part of the act of, I think, growing and growing in what you can bring through and how you can listen and how you can tune in to these subtle vibrations is a trust fall. It's this, I don't really know exactly how this is going to go. I don't know why I'm drawn to do what I'm drawn to do. I don't know why I'm moving to this area of the body, or I'm letting my arm, or my hand is starting to want to make this motion, but I'm going to just trust that I am being divinely guided and that it's going to be in the highest good and that this is going to work out. And there are all these moments when you feel like I might just have lost it, or somebody's going to think that I've lost it, or I'm going to be judged or ridiculed, or I'm going to lose the faith that people had in me by taking that extra step and just going with it. And yet, every time that I've ever done that, I've been validated in some way with the person being like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I didn't think to tell you that I'd actually had surgery on this part of me and it was recovering, and that's why you were down at this part of my body, or this is why you started singing part of this song. Originally, I started singing, when I started using my voice, pieces of songs, like random pop songs or old hymns, or things would pop into my head, like just a little piece, and I would think, I cannot possibly sing this song to this person. Like, this is crazy. This is some piece of an Alanis Morissette song or something. And I would just say, you know what? I have to do this for whatever reason. And I would sing it, and the people would burst into tears and be like, oh my gosh, I cannot tell you. This is exactly the message I needed. This is exactly the piece that I needed. And had I not let myself fall and done that thing that was scary, but just letting go of everything. And it feels so much like a trust fall. It's like, I'm just hoping that the Reiki's going to be there to support me, that when I open my mouth, I'm just trusting. I feel like in a lot of ways I'm falling back and trusting that Michael's going to catch me. You know, when we would go and do the Power of Story, or when we went to the Fertile Ground gathering to do Power of Story, we had never done this all
God,
together.
that was a trust
And
fall.
it was the biggest trust fall. It felt very much like standing on a cliff and turning our back to the chasm and just falling back and knowing they were going to catch us. And boy, did they ever. But there is something in that act of faith of falling. And I think of Samael doing that and not knowing, really not knowing what it was going to be like to make that fall, to volunteer to do this thing, and the not knowing, but having the faith, the complete faith and knowledge that he was going to be called and it was going to be okay. And he was doing this in service of a God who does not cast out and who only loves. And yeah, so that really resonates. And I'm so grateful for those that do that. The other thing, when I was hearing him talk about the falling and the balance, is that story. And I think I've talked about it before, the what is it called? The Little Soul and the Sun,
Yes.
by
Oh,
Neil Donald Walsh, and that he channels conversations with God and all of these things, and talks about that we as souls make choices when we come into this embodiment, that oftentimes we will choose to be the perpetrator of something in order to bring balance or help someone else to learn to experience themselves as forgiving. And there was a real parallel for me in that story of the idea of someone choosing to come down and be something less than the totality of who they are in order to serve a higher good. And if you haven't gotten that, I highly recommend that book. It's really, really beautiful. And we'll add a link. I know I've talked about it in some other podcast. It seems like
yeah, but
probably some other
always
life at
good
this
to hear
point.
it again.
But it is really beautiful, and it helps in so many different ways. One other thing that I was trying to make a little list of things as they were coming is the stillness, and Samael talking about the stillness and the importance of it. And I had a profound experience of that the other day when I went into the garden to connect with the ancestors. And the time before that, when I went out to connect with the ancestors, there was very much a sense of what's going to happen. I'm supposed to be meeting with my great grandfather, and all these things happened. And it felt like a very kind of productive session. It was like, wow, the doors were blown open. All these things happened. I was shown all kinds of things, and I was just blown away. And I was like, okay, that's what connecting with my ancestors in the garden is going to be like. And I know I have a lot of work that we're meant to do together in preparation of a new modality that I've been told to bring through. I had promised that this was going to be a practice. I was going to do this on a regular basis. So exactly a week later, I go down to the garden and I'm like, okay, here I am. And now, because I've already had an experience of it, I'm expecting, like, all right, we're going to make some serious progress today. I'm going to learn more. I'm going to get more of an understanding of this world that we're building and this other realm. And we're going to do all these things. And maybe I'll learn what those symbols do and all this stuff. And the message was very clearly, let's just sit together and open your eyes and look around and take in the beautiful sights in this garden, and the bees and the butterflies and the sounds around you. And the birds were absolutely like all around this like canopy of this kind of natural teepee that I have created. And I mean, it was just magnificent. And then I was like, okay, well, this is nice. Now I'm going to invite the fox to maybe show me. And now let's go ahead and start our work. This was really nice. What a nice thing you showed me. Now let's go ahead and we'll go to the cornerstone and we'll do these things. And so I invited the fox who's been guiding me on this. And the fox showed up. And this is a spirit kind of fox, not an actual physical fox. For those who are not familiar, I realize sometimes saying the fox showed up may be confusing. I'd close my eyes again, and there was the fox. And every time I've seen this fox before, it's turned and headed me out on a path, and I've followed it, and things have happened. This time, the fox turned, jumped into my lap, and curled up. And I was like, okay, all right, I really get it. And it was a beautiful thing, that idea of just letting go of all the expectations, all the making sure that I get it right, and making progress and all of this stuff. It's like part of the progress, part of the experience is just sitting here surrounded by my ancestors, enjoying the beauty of this earth. And there was definitely this open your eyes, take in where you physically are, take in the physical beauty around you. It's not just the beauty that you experience in these other realms, and with tapping into these other beings that are third heaven or higher kinds of areas, but the beings that are right here, right now, and your ancestors who were still right there, like really right there around me. And it was so beautiful. And that idea of that stillness, and like, oh yeah, sometimes the point is really just to be and be together.
Have a little bit more from Samael. He was talking a little bit more about the fall and then our own falling. He said, "We cried as we fell, as parts of us that were hard to release were left behind. And we clung together and spoke prayers when our feet touched the ground. We still had each other." Can you set that burden down? And if you say no, is it an excuse made out of the fear of what you will be without your pain? I am sure part of falling was I will be alone, that they did let go of what they needed to let go of and had it torn away. And when they found themselves in a new place, they clung together and spoke prayers. They still had each other. I think this speaks a lot to the experience of being human, that we feel like at some point our souls decided, I'm going down there. I'm getting me one of them human bodies, right? And whether this is your first incarnation or your 20th, there you had to make a choice to come here and leave behind a state of remembering and unity. And in doing so, that's a kind of fall. You had to leave behind a part of yourself, the part that remembers everything. And that's quite a sacrifice to make. That's pretty terrifying. But now that we're here, there's a lot of things here that make us cry. We just have to remember to cling together and speak prayers while our feet are on the ground, and remember that we still have each other.
Yeah, I feel like it was in one of the relatively recent podcasts that Samael was talking about reaching out to guides who were closer to our embodiment and not remembering our experience of being here and embodied. And that sometimes we need to have that connection and feel that connection with them, because they have an insight into being embodied and the things that we experience here, that maybe an angel who's at a really different level of vibration and has never been embodied and never been lived as close to earth as we have can't entirely give you that sense of camaraderie and understanding, because they haven't really been there.
Yeah.
And that part of that connecting and holding to each other, if you don't maybe have at this moment other physical humans, other humans who are in physical bodies, who are around, that you feel like you can hold to in those times when you want to cling together and cry, that you do have ancestors who
Yes.
can be around you, who get the experience, who really truly get it, and have more insight and more a broader vision of what is outside of what we can see and experience, and that we can invite in our well ancestors to be a part of that, standing with us and crying with us and holding us together. And I feel like maybe that's part of where he's been leading with the
Yeah.
guidance that he's been telling us lately, and the information a few podcasts ago about sitting and looking at the moss on the rock and examining the leaf and really connecting with being embodied and the stillness that comes with that, and connecting with the ancestors who are much more recently embodied as well.
So, people who are listening, as I know you've probably gathered at this point, Jen and I talk a lot when we're not on the podcast.
Like a lot.
Like, I'm not in the same house with her, and I think I might see talk to her more hours a day than her husband is able to because of his work. Like
Yes, much more.
I'm around all the time. Yesterday afternoon, a lot of things have been happening, not so much to me, but to everyone around me. Well, I guess they've been happening to me too, but
Lots to you too.
I'm watching all of these energies move and trying to process everything. And I got just suddenly so lonely for Jennifer Taylor, considering I'm either always A, leaving her a Marco, B, listening to said Marco, C, texting. Like, how in the world am I going to get lonely for her? Literally. But I had this, and I wanted to hear her sing so badly. I think just because it grounds me so much as well, aside from being lovely. And I'm texting her, I miss you. And so she called me and she reminded me of something very good. She said, Samael often forgets that I need to sleep and eat and do things along those lines. And in my eagerness to make sure that I'm delivering whatever he has to say, I am not very good at doing those things either. She was like, he doesn't have a body. You need to remind him that he needs to give you like a night off, right? I walked out of that conversation into the room where we have our television, and my dog was following me because she wanted to be fed. And my husband, who quit his job yesterday and was like a mess of emotion, was sitting in the chair. And I have a painting of Samael on the wall directly to the right. Okay. And I walked in, and the dog was going, because she wanted me to feed her. And my husband said, while you're standing near the refrigerator, could you please bring me an ice cream sandwich and a popsicle? And so I got them, and I walk in there, and the dog is following me crying, and I'm bringing him food. And I handed him the ice cream sandwich and the popsicle, and I said, all right, people, you are taken care of. And then I looked at the dog and I said, I will feed you now, and then you are going to give me a break. And then I turned around and I looked at the painting of Samuel on the wall and I said, and you, I need a couple of hours. And Vince just starts laughing. He's like, are you literally telling three different species to back off at once? And I said, yes, I am. Angel, human, dog, everybody give mama some room.
Good for
And it was,
you.
and then I go in and I put the dog food on the plate and he's in the other room and he goes, we're sorry, we can get our own snacks. It was really funny. So yeah, so poor Sam all got, communicated with the same way my husband did when he was getting an ice cream sandwich. Um, but yeah, boundaries are good. And Jen, you're really good at doing those. And it's something that I'm learning from you. So
I'm trying. I have my own areas where the boundaries are not as good, but I'm trying to learn from my lessons so I can stop repeating them as often. I keep thinking about what Samuel was saying about choosing to fall and what it was in service to, and trying to understand more of that, understand
yeah,
more of what would cause him to make such a sacrifice and such a choice, and how it benefited the all. And I realize he's not usually big into elaborating about it. And sometimes these are things that are just so far beyond our comprehension that it's like I could tell you, but it would just confuse you more
Yeah.
and you couldn't handle it. But if there is any more that he can tell us about that, I would be really interested to hear.
Yeah.
And
He
I'm
said
willing
to
to sing for it.
I know I was like, this might be a song one. Because he said, some of us chose to fall to earth to ground ourselves, to act, to balance out another holy act in progress. So it sounds like elsewhere, somewhere else, a lifting or raising was needed. And because everything in the universe has this balance, that maybe it had to do with, I mean, I don't know. If you sing, I'll ask him. You work with a ton of different entities and deities, but what you said is hits the nail on the head. Sometimes having someone there as a translator is incredibly valuable.
Yeah,
And that's kind of what
absolutely.
he does for us a lot of times is say, oh no, take a look at this. Oh no, take a look at that. There might be a different way of saying that, or allows us to express in words something that we might feel but have trouble translating in a way that we can share it with other people. To go back to that, God, I love that analogy of the blind monks and the elephant, right? Where they're all trying to feel the divine. Well, what if each of those monks spoke a different language? That would be that much harder to get a total picture of the elephant because you're crossing cultural perceptions and language barriers and all of these things. And that's sort of where Samael comes in is he pops down here and says in English, hey, this is what you might want to look at and moves us along. So yeah, I'll be happy to ask him what else was going on and if it's something that he can express to us.
Yeah. And
But I
also,
think I'm getting
actually, I
some
guess
singing for this.
probably, and I don't know, this is a hard thing to do together, but I do have a question if he has anything to say about the song that I sang during it, because it felt very different and
It
very,
sounded different, yeah.
very, very expansive. It was really interesting. It felt very expansive. And maybe I almost have the sense that maybe what I was doing was like it was like the energy, it feels like the energy of whatever was happening on the other side of the universe, that massive holy act that was of expanding, that they were coming down to balance. Because and it felt amazing. I felt like I could have sung it all day long. There was this motion, and it was also really interesting. The gong was responding really much more loudly than usual, and I was further away from it than I typically am when I hear it singing with me. And especially with my movement, it seemed to be really responding to the movements. And so the energy that I was moving. And so for those that are, most of you are probably listening to this as opposed to watching it on YouTube. If you see it on YouTube, you'll see what I'm talking about. But my hands were scooping from diagonally down to the left and then coming up together, and almost like I was throwing this stuff up into the air. What is that? Throwing holly? I think that like the colors were taking them and just throwing them up into the air. It almost felt like that. And the high notes were when I would be standing with my arms reached up to the sky. And when my hands would come up like that quickly, the gong would vibrate, would sing really loudly. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, it does not normally sound that loud. And usually if it sings with me, it seems to be more triggered by the sounds that I'm making. But this seemed like it was responding directly to the energy I was moving with my hands and my body as I was doing it.
I'm wondering if that's Michael describing the opposite event that
Yeah, the
he's
more I
talking
talk
about.
about it, I feel like that may have been that. It's like that was that massive expansion. And maybe Michael was a part of the expansion because they seem
Yeah.
to be working on the opposite ends of the spectrum, like working
Yes.
together and bringing balance. And I think that's part of what happens when we do Power of Story together, is that Michael is bringing in this balancing energy to the things that Samael is talking about. Yeah, so it really makes me wonder if Michael wasn't walking me through, was moving us through that, that was the
Yeah.
balance of what Samael was telling you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, would you mind singing again? And let's see if he will talk to
Sure.
us about whatever that holy event was.
Yeah, and also anything else as far as the choice for him and the impetus to come and lose that. And it's interesting because I was thinking, remember there was a song that he called Homecoming that I brought
Yes.
through like probably like 8 months ago now. And he was saying it's that it was really touching him, and it was the sound, it had the quality of the sound of home for him. And we were talking about, I don't understand, why would he be homesick? Because you kept describing it as it sounded like he was homesick, and it was giving him that feeling of home, and that feeling of home was in the song that was coming through. And so this makes a lot more sense
Yeah,
with regards to that, of like home being that sense of maybe some of what he left behind in order to be here and do what it is that he does and provide
right.
what he provides for us. That part of what he was missing is something that he can't necessarily go visit in the same kind of way, because he's not the same. He's let go
Right.
of these aspects of himself. You can't go back to being the person you were as a teenager and experiencing it the same way, because you're just not that anymore.
Right.
And that maybe that's part of what he was talking about. Because I remember us being confused by but how can you be homesick? Can't you just go? Aren't you
Yeah.
connected to everything? Aren't you in that? But this seems to lend a lot more kind of context to that.
Yes. Yes. That's something I've never asked him. I always just assumed that he bops around everywhere he wants to go and that he's always just himself. I never, until today, never thought about the fact that there was something at some point that he left behind for the purpose of becoming what he is now. I think a lot of times we also just think of angels as stagnant beings, but he has
Right.
said to us before that he can see farther than we can, but he does not see everything, and that he has his work, and that he has described Metatron as a teacher. So
Yeah,
it's
all
like
evolving. It's like the angels are
they're
still
evolving.
evolving. They are also
Yes.
evolving and learning and growing.
Yeah. Wow. All
Really
right, let's see
interesting.
what we get. I cannot wait to see what song comes through.
We really want to find out the answers, and we know you really want to find out the answers. But in order to not keep you here all day, I will sing a closing song for this episode, and then I will sing the song for Samael to see if we can find out some more information, and we can put that in. That will be part of next week's episode.
Yes, that'll be the opening song for next week, and we'll see what he has to say. Thank you for listening, everyone, and we will see you next week. Oh, I'm so excited.
Oh.